Heyo, before we begin, a quick shout out to Toxic Geek who I commissioned to create the music for the glorious new intro you're about to see. So go check his stuff out, I've put some links in the description below. Alright, here we go. So while I was cleaning the house the other day, I stumbled across this 1GB USB stick that I used to carry around years ago, and I found that it contained many flash files for different online Mario fan games, probably so I could play them on a school computer or something. Now these definitely bring back memories, but I still wanted to see how well these games have held up, and whether or not some of the games have aged over the years. Spoiler alert, most don't, but hey, I figured you guys might want to get a taste of these mediocre Flash games, whether you feel nostalgic for them or just want to laugh at them, so here we go. Now I know you guys just want to take a look at the bad stuff, so let's just get the good ones out of the way first. First on the list is the original Super Mario Flash, and while it has a generic name, I think it's one of the very first decent Mario Flash games. It's basically what you'd expect, a bare bones version of Mario with a regular running, jumping, and fireball throwing, and it has a nice little single player campaign, but this game actually controls pretty well despite only using the arrow keys and the spacebar. The physics also feel pretty tight, and every action from hitting blocks to kicking shells definitely replicates the originals pretty well. There's even a level editor where you can manually lay down tiles to create a level of your own and save them via notepad codes. I remember having a lot of fun making these levels as a kid, and it definitely shows. Yeah, that seems about right. Now some people in the audience may recognize this next one. Super Mario 63, which if you haven't played this game yet, please do. It's probably one of the best Mario fan games out there, and I'm honestly surprised that this was all done in Flash. For the uninitiated, Super Mario 63 basically adopts the free-roaming gameplay of Mario 64 into 2D, and also throws in FLUDD from Mario Sunshine, because why not? The story, while simple, is still slightly darker than the official games. In the distant past, the powers of tyrants who ruled the Mushroom Kingdom were locked by an ancient hero and sealed in the Orb of Power, which is now guarded by the Toadstools using the power of the Shine Sprites. Back in the present day, Bowser wants to get his hands on the orb, and so he crashes a surprise party for Mario, kidnaps the princess, and scatters the Shine Sprites throughout the land. So it's up to Mario to gather the Shine Sprites by venturing into paintings at the castle a la Mario 64. And yes, this is a full-scale adventure, and every course in Mario 64 is accounted for here, with their own unique shine to the star coins to collect, as well as a ton of secrets hidden in the castle itself. It's just really fun to explore and find everything this game has to offer. There's even a level editor in this game too for Virtual Boy's sake. Trust me, if you haven't played Super Mario 63 yet, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. And that's it, the only two games out of the ones we're going to look at that I would classify as great. I'm kinda sorry for skimming over them, but that's probably not what you're watching this video for. Here come the mediocre/terrible fan games. Why don't we start by playing a Flash version of a beloved arcade game, the classic Mario Bros. Oh, you can play with Captain Lo Albano as Mario in this game for whatever reason. Well, it's Mario Bros. Alright, it functions pretty fine even though it's not that well polished presentation wise, and there's even a 2-player mode, so if you don't have an official copy of Mario Bros. Nearby, then this may serve you just fine. I also kinda like how there's a practice mode where you just dodge barrels from Donkey Kong. Pretty nice touch. Alright, next up we have Super Flash Mario Bros. Well, of the many knockoffs of Super Mario Flash, they just attempt to put Mario gameplay into Flash and nothing more. And it doesn't really pull that off really well. Mario moves like he's skating on ice all the time, and it just squishes Goombas instead of bouncing off them like you normally would. Also, the blocks in this game don't really detect your hits that well. And you can't backtrack for whatever reason. It's cool. Okay. Yeah, this game is just not that polished in general. Let's just move on since I don't know what else to talk about it. Next up, New Super Mario Bros. Flash. Let's see what this game has up its sleeve. Let's go! Well, it just directly uses graphics from New Super Mario Bros., so there's that. The rest of the presentation just feels off, probably because the levels here are just bland, uninteresting, and not Mario-y. Also, the only enemies here are piranha plants, and Mario has an actual health meter instead. Okay, that's a thing piranha plants can do now, I guess. Anyway, yeah, the controls also feel kinda shoddy in this one. And the music just cuts itself off. Sure. The second portion of the level has more gimmicks like moving platforms and invisible blocks, so that's pretty neat. Okay, that should not have counted as a hit, by the way. Whoops, well, lost a life due to my own stupidity. Oh, well, apparently not. And that's the end of the game. Good job, Josh Anderson, you tried your best at the time. And thank you for putting this giant pit in the end so I can jump in and see absolutely nothing happen. Alright, next. Now, Mario Star Catcher 2 isn't really a Mario game per se. You can only move and jump in this game, and the objective is to get to the star at the end of the level, but all you do is basically avoid enemies and solve simple puzzles. There are coins and lives, but there's no power-ups and brick breaking, and you can't even jump on the dang Goombas. The physics and collision detection are also pretty rough. Most of these Mario Flash games don't give you a choice between running and walking, so you basically move at a decent speed on your own, and in Star Catcher 2 you can turn pretty fast too, leading to some pretty erratic movement. By the way, the moving platforms don't move you along with them, that's just terrible game design. The presentation is also pretty bare, there's a lot of floating tiles and oversized sprites all over the place. Whoa, geez, Bandai, slow down a bit there, buddy. I think that with some pretty interesting mechanics and puzzles down the line, this could be a decent fan game if more polish was given to the presentation and physics. I tried to see if I could beat it, but lost all my lives in this giant labyrinth of enemies who were probably doing drugs. I mean, look at them. Next up is Super Mario Flash version 2. Where's version 1 then? Is it the original and this game is just trying to leech off it? Yeah, maybe. So once you start the game, you end up in a tutorial area of sorts where you can just move around, grab coins, and the game teaches you about this manual kick move that's only used in the final boss for some reason. Well, might as well demonstrate by kicking this shell towards the Match Koopa. Okay, he's dead. So the first stage, Goomba Valley, is your typical grass level, and oh! I guess I'm just sullying the landscape with the blood of my enemies. Moving on. Yeah, it's pretty bland in here. There's no actual blocks to hit, Koopas die in one hit, you have a health meter. This game is barely trying to imitate Mario aside from the presentation, I guess. After a very short walk, you get to a room full of Goombas and then face off against a bigger Goomba that you stomp multiple times. Yay! Alright, he's dead. The next level, Pipe City, is a stage that... hey, can we try that again? The next level, Pipe City, is a stage filled with pipes that you can't actually go into, so it's merely the same basic platforming challenge with different aesthetic. Afterwards, you're into a fight with a giant piranha plant where you have to jump on its head. It's easy to avoid getting hurt if you just keep jumping all over the place. You know, for a second there, I thought it was gonna explode with blood all over the place, but guess not. And finally, the final level, Bowser Pass, which is literally a linear hallway with obscuring walls and a ton of Goombas and Koopas. There's also big Goombas, which die in 2 hits instead of 1, so hooray for variety. Also, the game just sorta glitched out here and let me pass through all the regular Goombas without getting hurt for some reason. Anyway, after this boring hallway, we finally get to face off against Bowser by repeatedly kicking a shell at him as taught to us in the tutorial. Bowser either shoots fireballs towards you or makes them appear in the lava, and they're easily predictable. You only have to wait for the shell to cool down for some mysterious reason after kicking it. Anyway, after this epic battle, we finally defeat Bowser and rescue the princess. Oh. Sure, we're going with that classic YouTube poop vibe here, that's a welcome alternative. As a side note, there's also a version of this game with a Halloween aesthetic, but aside from that, it's the same level layout, so I won't talk a lot about it here. Up next is Super Mafia Brothers, where Toad is excited about something, Bowser is dead, and Mario has fallen asleep after presumably watching a film about the Mafia, and imagines being a Mafia soldier in his dreams. Okay. Well, do you like Mario but with guns? If yes, then this is the game for you, sorta. It's your basic Mario platform level with the ability to shoot at Goombas and Koopas as well. There's also a run button in this game which is pretty neat, but without using it you gain very little vertical momentum when you jump, which leads to times when you have to make a running jump to move on, and then risk bumping into off-screen enemies because they're jumping all over the place. The game's one single level also looks pretty weird, looks like someone just drew up a bunch of geometry in MS Paint. Anywho, a bunch of identical set pieces later and we come across Bowser, who's starting a money battle and he's dead. Well, let's just grab the money bag, finish the level, and... Next, we have Luigi's Revenge Interactive, brought to you by the same people who made Super Mario Flash version 2, except this time around you play as Luigi instead. The controls are the exact same, with a kick move being used again for the final boss. The first level is once again pretty standard, although I think the presentation here has definitely improved since Mario Flash version 2. Nearly every enemy still dies in one hit though, but I still think that— oh, we're already at the boss now. Wow, that was a short level. The first boss is a giant porcupuffer which attacked by hitting it, I guess. It also has this random spin attack that is way too fast and has a way too large hitbox that becomes nearly impossible for me to react to it. I actually ended up dying once to this boss. Alright, finally I have that over with. The next level is a castle level already, strangely enough, with bony beetles and dry bones that just die in a hit once again. There's also a mushroom that refills your health meter, so that's cool. There's a bit of platforming, as well as Rexes that take 2 hits to kill. Some more enemies, and that's the end of the level. I didn't even edit the footage, that's how short the level is. Anyway, the boss here is a Thwomp, and you have to alternate between hitting the 2 switches so you can damage it via bullet bills. Definitely much easier than the porcupuffer in my opinion. Next level. So we enter Bowser's castle and with an auto scroll this time around, so it's nice to see some variety here even though the levels are miserably short. Alright, the final Bowser fight is terrible. For a moment I was stuck figuring out exactly what to do. There's nothing here for me to kick towards him. After dying and consulting the built-in strategy guide, I was told you have to jump up and kick the fireballs Bowser shoots out in mid-air. How was I supposed to learn that? Furthermore, doing it is a frustrating chore in and of itself. There's bullet bills flying all over the place and it's so hard to even hit the fireball while simultaneously kicking it at the same time. You can even get hurt by the fireball when you kick it. That's just terrible, frustrating design. I just barely made it. Anyway, we defeat Bowser and that's it. So what was Luigi seeking revenge for exactly? I don't know, it's probably revenge on Bowser for not kidnapping the princess in the previous game or something. As a side note, there's also a mode in the game called Toad Massacre, which should just speak for itself. Moving on, we have Super Mario Bounce, a puzzle platformer where Mario constantly bounces, and you have to get into the goal under a maximum number of bounces. It's a pretty neat idea, and you can also pick up different weapons and tools along the way to use against enemies which you can't jump on or create temporary platforms. However, with the need to juggle multiple tools, avoid enemies, and get to the goal in a limited number of bounces, I think the bounce limit could be a bit more forgiving since it's already hard enough to keep track of the tools you have, and you often end up losing lives because you bumped onto an enemy, and you only have a small amount of lives to begin with. I think this game would benefit a lot more from removing the life system altogether to further encourage experimentation and trial and error. But with how it functions right now, I basically lost motivation to continue after getting a game over on the stage, which requires you to put the temporary platforms in a precise location to get to the goal. Like I said, this game feels too strict and complicated for me to get maximum enjoyment out of, but the potential is definitely there. Last but not least, we'll end on what's also one of my favorites, Tuper Tario Trotters. The game begins in everyone's favorite World 1-1. You have your classic Mario platforming, but then a wall stops your progress and you're taught by this lackitude to switch games by pressing the spacebar. So we do that and oh, we're playing Tetris now. Okay. So the rest of the game is pretty straightforward. You can switch between Mario or Tetris mode, and you can build terrain for Mario to jump across or block enemy paths with in an auto-scoring level. The two games have their own score displays. You gain points in Mario Brothers by doing the usual block hitting and enemy stomping, and you gain points in Tetris by dropping blocks and clearing fakely defined lines. I'm still not sure how that works since it appears that clears only occasionally appear when I form long lines of blocks. I imagine this would be a great gameplay mechanic for people who want to rack up high scores, as it definitely proves to be an interesting challenge to manage both game modes at once. Anyway, once the pretty darn long level is over with, we clear the level by hitting the flagpole and the castle is gone. And you have 99 seconds to build it from scratch using the Tetris blocks, all the while a pipe constantly drops Goombas for Mario to defeat. You don't necessarily have to fill in the castle completely as evidenced by my subpar Tetris building skills, but successfully completing it perfectly will gain you bonus points at the end. After you complete the castle, your total score gets tallied by your Mario and Tetris scores, lives remaining, and whether or not you built the castle perfectly. For those who like to rack up scores, I imagine this would be an interesting game to replay. Overall, this game definitely has an interesting concept, so do check it out if you have the time. So that's it for the Mario Flash games I have on here. Some are good, some not so much, but this has definitely been quite the nostalgic trip for me, and hopefully for you too if you've coincidentally discovered some of these games a long time ago. And if you've never heard of these games, you should give them a try. I try and put links to the online versions of these games in the description below. Well, that's my time here today, so until next time, MVBBY.